Hello everyone, welcome to the last episode of The World Today this week. I'm Joke Rogers. Here's what's coming up on the program. White House announces U.S. President Donald Trump suffers from chronic vein conditions. Israel expresses deep regret after stray ammunition strikes Gaza's only Catholic church. Plus, UN confirms credible reports of widespread violations and abuses in Syria. The World Today begins right now. The United Nations Human Rights Chief Volker Turk says his office has received credible reports indicating widespread violations and abuses, including summary executions and arbitrary killings during the recent violence in the southern city of Sueda. According to Mr. Turk, the UN has documented the unlawful killing of at least 13 people on July 15, when armed individuals affiliated with the interim authorities deliberately opened fire at a family gathering. He adds that the office has also documented the public humiliation of a Druze man, including the forcible shavings of his mustache, an immortal cultural symbol of the Druze community. He warns that the bloodshed and violence in the region must stop, adding that those responsible must be held to account. Almost 600 people are reported to have been killed since sectarian clashes between Druze militias and Bedouin tribes erupted in the province. Amid escalating intercommunal violence in Syria, the United Nations has called on both Israel and Syria to refrain from any actions that could further undermine the 1974 disengagement of forces agreement and the stability of the Golan Heights. Assistant Secretary General for the Middle East, Asia and the Pacific at the Departments of Political and Peacebuilding Affairs and Peace Operations, Khaled Khiari, reiterates the Secretary General's unequivocal condemnation of all violence against civilians, including acts that inflame sectarian tensions and deprive the Syrian people of their chance for peace and reconciliation after 14 years of brutal conflict. Mr. Khiari also expresses condemnation of the Israeli airstrikes, noting that they targeted Damascus authorities, military forces and official buildings, including the Ministry of Defense and areas near the presidential palace. He adds that in addition to violating Syria's sovereignty and territorial integrity, Israel's actions undermine efforts to build a new Syria at peace with itself and the region and further destabilize the country at a sensitive time.
I reiterate the Secretary General's unequivocal condemnation of all violence against civilians, including all acts that fan the flames of sectarian tensions and rob the people of Syria of their opportunity for peace and reconciliation after 14 years of brutal conflict. Citing the violation against the Druze community and pledging to protect them, between 12 and 16 July, Israel resumed and intensified its airstrikes on Syrian territory. In this respect, I echo the Secretary General's condemnation of Israel's escalatory airstrikes, including on Sueda, Daraa, and in the center of the capital, Damascus. The strikes targeted the Damascus authorities' forces and official buildings, including the Ministry of Defense and the vicinity of the presidential palace, as well as the Maze military airport. In addition to violating Syria's sovereignty and territorial integrity, Israel's actions undermine efforts to build a new Syria at peace with itself and the region and further destabilize Syria at a sensitive time. It is essential that both Israel and Syria uphold the terms of 1974 disengagement of forces agreement to preserve the ceasefire between both parties and refrain from any action that will further undermine it and the stability on the Golan.
Meanwhile, Israeli's Deputy Permanent Representative to the United Nations, Jonathan Miller, has justified his country's ongoing operations in Syria as Tel Aviv came under fire during a United Nations Security Council session in New York. The envoy criticized the UNSC's meeting on the issue, calling it a politically motivated move, while violence was lashed on several communities across Syria. The comments come after multiple nations and the United Nations slammed Israel for its strikes on various territories of Syria, notably its capital Damascus and Sueda in the country's south. In response, Syrian Ambassador Qusay al-Dahak calls for international condemnation of Israeli attacks while demanding that Tel Aviv end its occupation of the Syrian Golan.
A serious crisis has been unfolding in Syria over the last couple of months that too many choose to ignore. The systematic prosecution of minorities in Syria and the dangerous consequences that extend far beyond its borders. But unsurprisingly, that is not why the relevant council members called for this emergency session today. Instead, they convened this meeting in a politically motivated move to condemn the state of Israel while ignoring the brutal massacre being carried out on Syria's people. Mr. President, over the past 6 months, we have witnessed a return of targeted violence against Syria's most vulnerable communities. Mass killings of Alawites in northwestern Syria, entire villages and neighborhoods wiped out. Then brutal aggression against the Kurds in the north. Just last week, the ancient Mar Mikhael church in the southern city of Sueda was razed, burned to the ground. Just days earlier, armed rebels carried out a deadly assault on another church, continuing their campaign of terror and destruction. And in the past few days, we have seen a new wave of violence being unleashed against the Druze community in southern Syria, a region close to Israel's northern border. Mr. President, in the book of Leviticus, God orders, Lo ta'amod al dam re'echa, you shall not stand idly by the bloodshed of your fellow. This is not just our religious obligation, but a moral one. We will not stand idly by as our close brothers and sisters are being slaughtered. This moral obligation is enshrined as formal law in Israel's legal code. And for this very reason, Israel carried out these precise strikes against jihadist militants in southern Syria.
In the meantime, Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan has condemned Israel's strikes on Syria, stating that his country will not allow the disintegration of Syria and vowing to defend its territorial integrity. Speaking in Ankara, he claims Israel was using the Druze as a pretext, calling Tel Aviv's actions a threat to the entire region. His comment follows a phone call with Syria's transitional president, Ahmed al-Shara. Away from Syria, Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has expressed deep regret after stray ammunition struck Gaza's only Catholic church, killing 3 people sheltering inside. In a statement, Mr. Netanyahu says Israel is investigating the incident and reaffirmed the country's commitment to protecting civilians and religious sites. According to the Latin Patriarchate of Jerusalem, an Israeli shell hit the Holy Family Church in the besieged enclave, resulting in 3 deaths and several injuries, added that many sought sanctuary in the church, hoping that the horrors of war might at least spare their lives after their homes, possessions and dignity had already been stripped away. Meanwhile, head of the Catholic Church and sovereign of the Vatican City State, Pope Leo, has also expressed deep sorrow over the casualties, renewing his call for a Gaza ceasefire. Away from Syria, the United Nations has condemned Israeli strike that hit the Holy Family Church in Gaza, reiterating that attacks on places of worship are unacceptable. Speaking to reporters in New York, UN Associate spokesperson Stephanie Tremblay says seeking shelter must be respected and protected, not hit by strikes, stressing that there's an urgent need for an immediate ceasefire and unconditional release of all hostages.
Secretary General for the Middle East, Asia and the Pacific. The Secretary General strongly condemns today's strike on the Holy Family Church in Gaza, a place of worship and a sanctuary for civilians. Attacks on places of worship are unacceptable. People seeking shelter must be respected and protected, not hit by strikes. Too many lives have already been lost. There's an urgent need for an immediate ceasefire and the immediate and unconditional release of all hostages. The Secretary General calls on all parties to ensure that civilians are respected and protected at all times and allow humanitarian aid to flow into the Gaza Strip at scale.
Meanwhile, U.S. President Donald Trump has called Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to address the deadly strike on Gaza's only Catholic church. Briefing journalists in Washington, D.C., White House press secretary Caroline Leavitt revealed that President Trump had a telephone call with Israel's Prime Minister and did not react positively to the incident. 3 people were reportedly killed in the Israeli airstrike on the church that's Gaza's only Catholic church.
It was not a positive reaction. He called Prime Minister Netanyahu this morning to address the strikes on that church in Gaza, and I understand the Prime Minister agreed to put out a statement. It was a mistake by the Israelis to hit that Catholic church. That's what the Prime Minister relayed to the President, and you should look at the Prime Minister's statement. The video was floated from someone in the media to the President. The President would not recommend a special prosecutor in the Epstein case. That's how he feels, and as for his discussions with the Attorney General, I'm not sure. I won't discuss the President's private conversations with the Speaker of the House, but as I answered to Jackie's question earlier, the President has said if the Attorney General and the Department of Justice and the FBI have any more credible evidence in regards to Jeffrey Epstein's crimes, they should put that forward. He has called on them to do that.
In the meantime, the U.S. President has directed the Justice Department to produce additional documents related to convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. The President also announced plans to sue the Wall Street Journal over an article alleging that a bawdy birthday greeting bearing his name was sent to Epstein in 2003 before the late financier was charged with sex crimes. President Trump described the report as false, malicious, and defamatory. Meanwhile, Attorney General Pam Bondi said that the department is prepared to unseal grand jury transcripts. However, she noted that it may take some time for a judge to authorize the release. Well, separately, the White House has announced that U.S. President Donald Trump is suffering from a chronic vein condition following speculation over photographs showing bruising on the president's hand. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt says President Trump's bruised hand was consistent with tissue damage from frequent handshaking while taking aspirin, which she said is part of a standard cardiovascular prevention regime.
Speculating about bruising on the president's hand and also swelling in the president's legs. So in the effort of transparency, the president wanted me to share a note from his physician with all of you today. In recent weeks, President Trump noted mild swelling in his lower legs. In keeping with routine medical care and out of an abundance of caution, this concern was thoroughly evaluated by the White House Medical Unit. The president underwent a comprehensive examination, including diagnostic vascular studies. Bilateral lower extremity venous Doppler ultrasounds were performed and revealed chronic venous insufficiency, a benign and common condition, particularly in individuals over the age of 70. Importantly, there was no evidence of deep vein thrombosis or arterial disease. Laboratory testing included a complete blood count, comprehensive metabolic panel, coagulation profile, D-dimer, B-type natriuretic peptide, and cardiac biomarkers. All results were within normal limits. An echocardiogram was also performed and confirmed normal cardiac structure and function. No signs of heart failure, renal impairment, or systemic illness were identified. Additionally, recent photos of the president have shown minor bruising on the back of his hand. This is consistent with minor soft tissue irritation from frequent handshaking and the use of aspirin, which is taken as part of a standard cardiovascular prevention regimen. This is a well-known and benign side effect of aspirin therapy. and the president remains in excellent health, which
For more update on President Trump's health, let's turn our attention to Washington, D.C., where our correspondent Maria Bird is joining us from. Hello, Maria. Great to see you today.
See you as well.
Right. So is there any new information regarding President Trump's health condition, even though we just heard the White House spokesperson talking about the fact that he's in excellent health? Is that all the information that we have?
Well, right now, we hope the president's health continues to move in the right direction. He has stated that he doesn't really feel much, and so we are glad for that. Obviously, his health is of the utmost importance for the American people to ensure that the president's able to continue out his duties in a way of being healthy in that nature. And so at this time, what we have really seen is that when you look at all the studies that have been done. And additionally, when you look at his age at 79 years old, this is a very common condition for individuals of that age. And so one of the things the doctor did note, and so that's kind of what has been followed up over the last couple of hours, is really around the fact that this is not uncommon for someone of his age. And so this is a condition that is monitored, obviously, one that does bring concern, but not concern to the point that it impairs his ability to conduct his duties as president. And so that obviously was the number one concern for many Americans was, will this impair his ability to be able to carry out his duties? And so we look to see right now that he seems to be feeling okay. The doctors have obviously provided that report, which I think makes Americans very comfortable that the doctor is able to provide that level of report. So that was key and critical.
Well, in spite of that report, what about, from people? Have there been any noticeable changes in his public appearances, speech patterns, or, physical demeanor that are raising concerns among observers in Washington?
There has not been necessarily any major concerns brought up. I think that the concern initially was when you heard about the news of the president having this type of potential health challenge. That was, what is the health challenge? What does this mean? What does this mean for the country? As you know, we are very busy in Washington right now politically. And so it is not a time where people are they would like to make sure the president is healthy.
And how is the Republican Party responding to growing questions surrounding the president's health, even though doctors say that he's quite well?
Well, the Republican Party is obviously of support. They're glad to hear that the condition is something that's manageable, that the doctors have this under control. And so they are glad to hear the information. I think the Republican Party is just trying to really ensure that they're able to move some of their focal points forward. We know there's several bills before the House, the Senate. The president has been moving fast ever since he hit office. And so they're really obviously focused on his health, being able to continue the work that they set out to do.
And is there mounting pressure, in Washington for an updated medical record about the president being the #1 public servant, if I can put it that way, in the United States? People will want to know more than the White House is possible pushing out at this time.
Well, I think that people have asked for that before, but having that letter read by the press secretary does provide a level of assurance. And I think that was key and critical that they did that, because you have not heard much additional pressure for further medical records to be released.
Right. And in spite of assurances from the presidency, how is the public reacting to this news? Has there been any notable shift in public trust or confidence?
Well, I don't think so. I think that when it was brought forth that this is a common condition for individuals of his age, I think that did bring some ease to the American people. I think trust, I don't think there's an issue around trust. I think Americans were initially just concerned about, is he healthy? What are some of the potential challenges and impacts he would experience? And that was the first order of concern. And once those were addressed, I think people were comfortable with what that meant. Now, obviously, we are in very stark political times, and so Republicans and Democrats are still working forward to try to have both of their agendas addressed. And so it's just a very focused time politically here in the United States.
And finally, as I let you go, let me just push through to one other story, one of our top, which is the Gaza strike, the Israeli strike on the only Catholic church in the Gaza Strip. The president has called Israeli Prime Minister, obviously, according to the White House spokesperson, that he wasn't very happy about what happened. Tell us a little bit more about the president's stance on this and his increasing call for a ceasefire between Hamas and Israel.
Well, as you know, the president has been very clear from the beginning about ceasefire. Any type of religious organization that has gone under attack is a concern for the American people and specifically for the president. And so the Catholic Church having been hit is a concern in an area that the president's going to continue to speak about the need for ceasefire in the region. So this just continues the efforts there. This obviously will then rally around the Catholic Church community here in the United States to support the efforts around call for peace. That is going to be one of the key and critical components as the president continues to push forward with a peace and ceasefire initiative from the United States.
Right. Maria, thanks again. Meanwhile, the U.S. government has begun construction of a secondary wall in Santa Teresa along its southern border with Mexico, aiming to reinforce the existing steel fence that already separates the two countries. Border authorities say the new wall, standing over 5 meters high, will stretch approximately 11 kilometers between New Mexico and Ciudad Juarez. However, migrant advocacy groups have criticized the project, arguing that the wall will do little to deter migration as it fails to address the root causes driving people to cross the border. Reports say the project involves an investment of over $46.5 billion to strengthen infrastructure in the border area, in addition to another $45 billion allocated exclusively for the detention and processing of migrants. Welcome back. India has pushed back against NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte's warning of secondary sanctions over its continued trade with Russia. Speaking at a press briefing, Ministry of External Affairs spokesperson Randhir Jaiswal says the country's decision are shaped by market offerings and current global circumstances. Earlier this week, U.S. President Donald Trump threatened to impose secondary tariffs on countries trading with Russia. India has faced repeated pressure from the West to sever its ties with Moscow. However, over the past 3 years, its imports of oil products from Russia have continued to rise.
We have seen reports on the subject and are closely following the developments. Let me reiterate, and I've said this in the past as well, securing energy needs of our people is understandably an overriding priority for us. In this endeavor, we are guided by what is there on offer in the markets, as also by the prevailing global circumstances. We would particularly caution against any double standards on the matter. Russian oil, etc., we are closely following developments that are in this regard and the articulations that are being made.
Also, UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer and German Chancellor Friedrich Merz have signed the first treaty between the two countries since World War II. Prime Minister Starmer described the agreement as an expression of shared aims and values. In response, Chancellor Merz said that he deeply deplored the UK's decision to leave the EU, adding that Russia's shaking the European architecture while transatlantic ties are undergoing a far-reaching transformation. The deal covers support for NATO, the loosening of bilateral travel restrictions, plans for direct train services, school and youth exchange programs, and a commitment to cooperate on cross-border crime and people smuggling.
We see the scale of the challenges our continent faces today, and we intend to meet them head-on. But we also see the scale of the opportunities. So we have a shared resolve to shape this new era with new leadership. The UK and Germany side by side, delivering growth and security, and delivering for working people. And that is why earlier today we did something genuinely unprecedented. Building on our new agreement with the EU, together we signed the Kensington Treaty, the first ever major bilateral treaty between the United Kingdom and Germany, two great modern European nations. It's an expression of our shared aims and values. But more than that, it's a practical work plan, setting out 17 major projects where we will come together to deliver real results which will improve people's lives. So a historic treaty, a statement of intent and ambition. And we intend to do, amongst other things, as leading NATO powers in Europe, committing not only to our mutual defence, but also to maximise the benefits of our defence spending in the shape of more jobs, more growth and more security. Under this treaty, we will bring our industries together to boost defence exports by billions of pounds, and will speed up collaboration on high-tech weapons and equipment, strengthening NATO and keeping our people safe. Our economic links already support 500,000 British jobs. So under this treaty, we will go further with e-gate access for frequent business travellers.
Let's discuss this treaty further and, of course, its significance between the UK and the German government. Joining us is DW correspondent Chiponda Chimbelu. Chiponda, great to see you again today. So why was this treaty signed in the first place?
European countries are working more together to strengthen their defense architecture. Russia's ongoing war in Ukraine has increased the need for more cooperation when it comes to defense and security. And this year, the need for European countries to work together became even more apparent when the Trump administration took office in January. The White House has challenged how Europe sees the transatlantic partnership. And with that, the idea that European countries can rely on Washington for defense and security. And this is why this treaty, which has been dubbed the Kensington Treaty, is so important for the UK and Germany and also the EU.
Is the main focus of the treaty security?
The agreement goes beyond defense and security cooperation. Germany and the UK are also planning to deepen ties and exchanges between Germans and the Brits. One of the plans is to establish a new rail connection between the two countries with a direct train link between Berlin and London. British and German frequent travelers will also get access to e-gates at airports. And visas for school exchanges will also be simplified, so that will make it easier for German and British school kids to experience each other's countries. And even more important for the United Kingdom is the fact that Germany is pledging to help it fight irregular migration. The two countries will work together to combat human trafficking and people smuggling.
Now, Chiponda, how significant is this trip for the UK? Does it mean that Westminster is resetting its relations with EU countries after Brexit?
Well, it is now 5 years after Brexit, and the UK is definitely closer to the European Union than it was in 2020, the year it left the bloc. This year, Westminster and Brussels reached a new agreement on post-Brexit relations, which covered defense, trade, and fishing rights. And Prime Minister Keir Starmer has hosted several summits for European leaders on Ukraine and defense. Just this month, he hosted, of course, German Chancellor Friedrich Merz and the French President Emmanuel Macron, who was in London last week. And Starmer and Macron announced a deal to fight irregular migration with a one-in, one-out agreement. So the UK is deepening its ties with the EU's biggest countries, Germany and France, and of course, the European Union as well.
Chiponda, thanks again. Well, the United Nations Security Council has voted to extend the mandate of its Haiti mission known as BINU until January 2026. U.S. Ambassador Dorothy Shea says that the mission's continued presence would help support Haiti's transition to democracy while promoting human rights and strengthening the rule of law. Panama's envoy, Eloy Alfaro, said that the security situation is complex and multidimensional, saying stronger institutions and political progress are needed before elections can take place. Haiti's ambassador to the UN said the extension should help promote dialogue and good governance.
Will those in favor of the draft resolution contained in document S/2025/454 please raise their hand? The result of the voting is as follows. The draft resolution received 15 votes in favor. The draft resolution has been adopted unanimously as Resolution 2785/2025.
BNU's continued presence will help support Haiti in its path towards that democratic transition. Today's reauthorization of BNU's mandate is an important step closer to that goal. Supporting the security of elections and the participation of all sectors of society is key to sustainable political progress in Haiti. Without BNU, realizing the vision of a stronger, more resilient society would be less likely. The reauthorization of BNU's mandate is a positive step to support the Haitian people, but we must continue to refine our approach. As Council members, our continuing collective efforts have the power to secure a more just and peaceful future for all Haitians. We urge all Council members and all member states to extend their support along with us.
Elsewhere, Burkina Faso's military rulers have disbanded the country's electoral commission, saying this would reinforce sovereign control on the electoral process and at the same time limit foreign influences. According to the Territorial Administration Ministry, the Electoral Commission was subsidized with around $870,000 a year. Local media reports that the Interior Ministry will now handle elections in the future. However, it's unclear when that will take place. Since seizing power in September 2022, the coup leaders have initiated sweeping reforms, including the postponement of elections, which would lead to a return of civilian rule. A nationwide vote was due last year, but the junta extended the period of transition to democracy until July 2029, allowing leader Captain Ibrahim Traoré to remain in power and free to contest the next presidential election. And France has formally handed over Camp Gil to its largest military base in Senegal to the Senegalese government in a ceremony that held in Ouakam. Senegalese Chief of the General Staff, Mbaye Cissé, lauded the event as an important turning point in the rich and long journey of military cooperation between Senegal and France, adding that the new format of partnership is aligned with Senegal's updated defense and security doctrine, aiming to strengthen the autonomy of its armed forces while contributing to regional and global security. Commander of French forces in Africa, General Pascal Iani, was also at the ceremony with Senegalese and French soldiers standing in formation with rifles. The transfer marks the end of a 65-year French military presence in Senegal. Roughly 350 French troops who had been conducting joint operations with Senegal's army are now leaving as part of a withdrawal process initiated in March. South Africa's Deputy President Paul Mashatile is hailing what he calls a solid relationship between his country and China, calling for stronger economic ties in the 26-year bilateral ties. Mr. Mashatile was speaking to business leaders and officials at the South Africa-China Investment Forum in Beijing, also highlighting a growing trade imbalance he says favors China. South Africa mainly exports raw materials and minerals while importing manufactured goods and capital equipment from China. Mr. Mashatile said that new efforts are needed to rebalance trade and promote sustainable development. The forum comes amid renewed interest from both governments in expanding cooperation in infrastructure, energy, and green technology sectors.
To ensure a mutually beneficial outcome that aims to strengthen economic have seen substantial growth since the establishment of diplomatic ties in 1998. We value this long-standing relationship because it has been established on a shared vision for a prosperous future. It goes without saying that this relationship is solid. We are both part of the BRICS Economic Partnership, along with Brazil, Russia, and India. Additionally, both our nations participate in various other multilateral institutions. We collaborate on global issues and promote the interests of the developing countries. Whilst the relationship has benefited both nations by increasing trade and investments, there are some drawbacks, such as a continuing trade deficit between South Africa and China, which favors China. Africa mainly exports raw materials and minerals while importing manufactured goods and capital goods from China. To put it in numbers, South Africa's trade deficit with China has risen from less than $1 billion between 1998 and 2000. Since FOCAC's inception, this trade imbalance has resulted in an accumulated cash outflow of about $114.8 billion from South Africa to China. This calls for urgent action between our two countries to ensure a mutually beneficial outcome.
Elsewhere, North Korea has announced that its newly opened seaside resort will not be receiving foreign tourists just weeks after promoting it as a world-class tourist and cultural destination. The Wonsan Kalmak Coastal Tourist Zone, which opened on July 1, has been touted as a key part of North Korean leader Kim Jong-un's ambitions to boost tourism. In the lead-up to its opening, the resort was promoted as an attraction for both locals and foreigners. However, this week, a notice on North Korea's official tourism website stated that foreigners are temporarily not allowed to visit. And in South Korea, at least 3 people have been killed and more than 1,000 evacuated after the country was hit by torrential rains. With the rain front moving northward, authorities have placed the Chongcheong provinces and the southern parts of Gyeonggi province under the second highest disaster alert level. In the Chongcheong region, landslides have trapped residents, leading to the closure of major highways, including the Honam Expressway and the suspension of multiple train services. Schools have also been closed, with damage reported to homes, infrastructure, and farmland. Meanwhile, experts have linked the increase in severity and frequency of such weather events to climate change, drawing comparisons to the 2022 floods that killed 11 people. Authorities have raised the landslide threat level to serious and urged residents to comply with evacuation orders and avoid inundated areas, as heavy rain is expected to continue in the coming days. Welcome back. The Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan, was recently on a visit to Lagos alongside 26 people in his delegation as they seek to create stronger ties with other Nigerian businesses who want to scale up presence globally. One of such businesses is Upskill Universe, a digital learning and social impact scale-up. Its founder and CEO, Gori Yaya, is the brain behind some of the world's largest tech talent academies. Using AI tools as a launchpad, he is well on his way to empowering 10,000 African SMEs in collaboration with HP and Google.
Any organization, we build large-scale training programs on topics like AI, data, leadership, to help businesses feel empowered to take advantage of the tech that we have in this world, grow their business, get a job, or even progress within your organization. So getting to know things like AI, how to use data effectively. And we've run some of the largest training programs across the UK, but also even across Nigeria and actually other countries across Africa as well.
Does it also extend to the newsroom, like to news media?
Yeah, so we ran a program specifically focused on news media. It was actually digital transformation. We worked with the Google's News Initiative to help them educate publications on how they can embrace some of the new technologies that Google's are bringing out to support the newsroom in terms of embracing tech.
But you know, the general fear is that AI could replace jobs. So how are you helping to minimize that fear while still helping others to know that their jobs are still secure?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's a big worry for people, right? Because we're getting more familiar with the power of AI and what it can do at such a rapid rate. And I think what people often underestimate is our ability as humans to be able to adapt effectively, right? AI is just a tool. It's a technology. It's what we're using to help us do our jobs better. So it will replace and it will come for your tasks, right? But your role is not your tasks. The value you bring to your organization is not just the task that you do. So it's about understanding the value you bring and helping you embrace it in a way that can be a companion to you, and you're not just using it in a way that you're thinking it's going to take over everything that you do. That can't be the case. And
so it's not a replacement?
It's not a replacement. It's there to support you, to elevate you, right? You know, I often talk about the future belonging to human intelligence, our ability to solve complex problems, our ability to really look at problems in a way that have a certain level of complexity, right? That with the right kind of curiosity can help us solve them in a more efficient and effective way. You need that. AI can't do the things that we do at the moment. What it can do is help us tackle the tasks that we have much more efficiently and much more effectively. And that's kind of how we're using it effectively.
And same with the mayor's visit. Among the 26-man delegation accompanying the mayor of London during his first visit to Nigeria is Suresh Vangyani, co-founder and CEO of Cloud9, the world's first cloud-native, cloud-certified, decentralized issuer processing platform. The startup is designed to be the host efficient and most data processor, enabling real-time payments across any network, any system, and any payment type anywhere in the world. He tried to break it down for those not in the tech space.
Down for a number of Nigerians who are not in the tech space.
Yeah, no, look, it's really hard to explain to somebody what we do. It's a bit like showing someone a house and saying, you see this house? Isn't it amazing? And they're like, yeah, did you build the house? Like, no, we didn't build the house. But you know the plumbing in the house and the foundations? We did all of that. And they're like, yeah, but how does that work? So what it is when it comes to, when you think of a lot of these fintechs and neobanks, they have amazing apps, amazing user experience. It's very slick in design and appearance. But what sits behind it, the infrastructure that sits behind it, some of that is 20, 30 years old.
Yeah.
And it hasn't innovated for years. So people are building on a foundation that fundamentally is dated, isn't as flexible as it should be, and it just looks really great on the front end. What we've done at Cloud9 is rebuilt the back-end infrastructure. I kind of call it the non-sexy side of payments. It's what you don't see. It's the plumbing, the infrastructure, all of those things. And when it comes to the banks that want to do the next generation of debit cards and wallets and apps, it really, really pushes the boundaries. So we're a team very, very experienced. we worked with Revolut from inception. You know, when they just had an idea. Revolut, Monzo Bank, Starling, TransferWise. So, you know, you wouldn't hear about us because we're very much behind the scenes, but the team is very experienced and we've built this groundbreaking infrastructure in the cloud in a way that we have no geographical barriers. And the funny thing is, when I think about Africa, I see a country and a region that can learn from the mistakes of other places. You know, you look at here, you know, you're not messing around with copper wires for your telephones. You went straight to mobile. So in that same way, you have an opportunity to take the best in breed, latest technology from the West, where you don't have to deal with legacy.
True.
So, you know, we are entirely in the cloud. It means we have no geographical barriers, and it means that we can service customers at a fraction of the time in terms of getting them live at the fraction of the cost. And many people that want to have debit cards and bank accounts, it's very, very costly to maintain them.
8 babies have been born in the UK using genetic material from 3 people to prevent devastating and often fatal conditions. Doctors say the method, pioneered by UK scientists, combines the egg and sperm from a mum and dad with a second egg from a donor woman. The technique has been legal for a decade, but now there's a first proof it leads to children born free of incurable disease. These conditions are normally passed from mother to child, starving the body of energy. Children born through the 3-person technique inherit most of their DNA, their genetic blueprint, from their parents, but also get a tiny amount, that's about 0.1%, from the second woman. This is a change that is now passed down the generations. A volcanic fissure opened near Grindavik on Wednesday, prompting the evacuation of more than 100 residents and tourists amid escalating seismic activity and lava flows. Lava spurts from a giant fissure on the Sundanuka crater with smoke plumes rising and lava flows streaming south, west, east and away from the area. The popular Blue Lagoon Spa and nearby campsites have been evacuated and roads have been closed as precautionary measures. Although lava flow reportedly poses no immediate threat to infrastructure, concerns persist over volcanic gas emissions and the potential for new fissures to emerge. And Cristiano Ronaldo is bringing his legacy to Asia with the new exhibition in Hong Kong that highlights key moments from the Portuguese football superstar's illustrious 2-decade career. The exhibition features a collection of Ronaldo's iconic jerseys, a replica of his locker at Real Madrid, and lifelike installations of the football legend in various stages of his career, dressed in different outfits, including a Saudi jubba and Juventus kit. Visitors and fans wander through immersive digital zones, pausing at trophies and identity documents from his early years. Ronaldo, in a statement released during the opening of the museum, said, "This is not just a museum, it's a tribute to hard work, passion, and never giving up." The CR7 Life Museum, situated within an upscale shopping mall on the Kowloon Peninsula of the city, provides fans with an immersive experience into Ronaldo's life and achievements. The exhibition features 40 exhibits, including trophies, life-size statues, and personal memorabilia in a year-long display. Organizers anticipate 12 million visitors during the museum's year-long run in Hong Kong before it relocates to mainland China. We also still see him in some of those moments during his days with the English football team, Manchester United. Well, that's it on The World Today. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Jokia Rogers.